Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. As you heard earlier in my preamble, my concerns about COVID-19 and its recent increase in the cases, and to speak with us on this situation is Dr. Adana Grandison. She is the first Vice President of the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners, and she also sits as a member of BAMP's COVID-19 Task Force. Good morning, Dr. Grandison.
Good morning.
How are you, ma'am?
Thank you for having me. I'm fine, thank you. And you?
Not too bad, thank you. My first question to you would be about the increase of the cases, but before that, I just want to sidetrack a little bit about the vaccination before we get to the actual increase. A question was posed to me this morning by someone, and they wanted to know, when you get an injection of vaccine, you normally would get a reaction, and they tell you that's normally the vaccine working. What about the persons who do not get any response, any reaction at all? Does that say something about the person being able to take to the vaccine? Are we immunized for those of us who didn't have any symptoms afterwards or reaction afterwards?
Okay, great. So that's a very good question, and I can understand why the confusion. So to start off, anytime that you take any vaccine, and not just the COVID-19 vaccine, we expect that there will be some variability in terms of local response, which is at the site of the injection, and then also systemic response, which is the fever, the chills, sometimes the muscle aches and tiredness that you may have for a day or two after the vaccine. Now, that can happen to someone, and we've seen, especially initially with the AstraZeneca vaccine, the first set of data coming out was that most young persons, i.e. persons under the age of 60 years old, actually presented with either systemic or local symptoms after the vaccine, okay? And that is essentially us letting the body know something is actually happening. Now, there are persons who may be either immunocompromised, like for instance, someone who may have chronic kidney disease or otherwise immunocompromised diabetes, or even persons within the elderly population who may get the vaccine and have absolutely no symptoms. This does not mean that your immune system is not working. It's just that we expect that a young person will have a very robust and aggressive immune system and will certainly attack anything that it sees very, very quickly. How viruses generally work when we get infected with a virus is that it takes a few days, essentially, for our body to recognize this foreign entity within circulation. And once the body has recognized this foreign entity, it then will mount the appropriate response to get that foreign entity out of circulation. And so this is why we tend to see persons having an immune response. But that is actually letting you know your immune system is working. But there are persons who will have no response at all.
But no response does not mean your immune system is not working.
It's not working, correct.
It just, the body is just responding in a different way.
Different way, absolutely.
But we are all fully vaccinated. For those who had a response or didn't have, don't have to worry that it didn't take.
So I will say there are historically some vaccines that can cause challenges in terms of persons taking the entire course. For instance, hepatitis B is a common vaccine that we can see that with. You're generally supposed to take 3 doses of the hepatitis B vaccine. However, there is a very small population of persons that even after taking all 3 doses of the vaccine, they would not have mounted the enough titer to demonstrate that they're fully immunized against hepatitis B. In an ideal situation, what one would actually check is actually titers, and those are antibody titers to confirm that you are fully immunized against any particular pathogen.
Okay, so let's just say now recently we heard of 3 cases coming from the Caribbean. The islands were not named, but it was stated that the individuals were vaccinated and they presented with COVID-19 positive tests. We know that the science says you can still catch COVID. Are we collecting data for the same thing that I'm speaking of, where we can say, well, look, this person has been vaccinated, they did catch COVID. Can we tie it back into the response they might have received from getting the vaccine in terms of then looking to see whether or not it took or not? Is that something that we would factor in to get this information to be more accurate as to why would you catch COVID after a vaccine to help with the science?
So I would say to you, remember that getting the COVID vaccine does not mean that you cannot contract COVID, all right? The purpose and the primary outcome of the COVID vaccines, and this is across the board, really was to, one, decrease the potential chances for you having very adverse outcomes, so severe disease profile, and also the possibility of hospitalization, ventilation, and death. That is the primary reason why we are using the COVID-19 vaccine. And we do that because we really do not want to overwhelm our medical resource. In any pandemic that you can have, the challenges that you really get aren't simply because you have a presentation of disease within your population. But if you have many persons within your population with severe disease requiring lots of resources at the same time, you will overwhelm your system. So there is a possibility, and I take it back to you, what you just asked. There is a possibility that you can have some person who has had their full course of Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, Sinopharm, any of the vaccines out there, Sputnik, and you can still present with disease. Does it mean that that person will have severe disease? No, it doesn't mean that. But that is why we strongly recommend, even after you've gotten your 2 doses of your vaccine here locally, we strongly recommend that you still ensure to wear your face mask properly, which is covering both your nose and your mouth, wash your hands, and still social distance, because there's still the possibility that you can get it. And we still aren't at herd immunity levels yet. So certainly if you can get it, you can transmit it to someone who is either immunocompromised and certainly the unvaccinated.
Which then leads me into my next question, as you mentioned about the various types of vaccines available on the market. Do we have enough data to show the difference with the side effects with the Sinopharm and the AstraZeneca vaccine? Because most of us would have had the AstraZeneca. There's no more on the island, that was stated. So the Sinopharm is now being administered. Do we know about the side effects for that particular vaccine versus the AstraZeneca vaccine?
So the Sinopharm vaccine, based upon the research that I have been doing in terms of reading from the WHO in terms of their clearance, because they have given interim clearance for usage of the Sinopharm vaccine, the profile is essentially quite similar to that. So we expect that persons can get soreness at the injection site, as you can get with any vaccine, not just AstraZeneca. And some persons will have increased temperature to the point where they may have a very low-grade fever. And some persons may also get muscle aches. And that's really the body letting you know that something is happening. There's some foreign entity in there. But this vaccine, the Sinopharm vaccine, has actually been given approval by WHO in terms of interim use, just like AstraZeneca.
Okay, but
Moderna
you haven't,
and Pfizer.
Okay, but you haven't collated any data as yet, because we just started.
No, we have not. We just started our Sinopharm rollout very recently. I think it was this.
But you have data from World Health, even though it has been passed by WHO. Is there information coming in about its side effects coming in from the various parts of the world that have administered the Sinopharm,
So I'm assuming that when you say side effects, because we use the term side effects.
Okay, let me rephrase. It's okay. Well, true. Okay. Well, let me break it down. I just get the vaccine in 12 hours. What are you gonna feel? Versus with the AstraZeneca, for me, I just had soreness. For others, they were out for 3 days completely with fever.
Correct.
It varied.
Correct.
But with the Sinopharm, and I know we just now administered it here, but do we have any evidence of those types of responses internationally from that particular vaccine?
Internationally, we are seeing a similar profile between Sinopharm and AstraZeneca in terms of presentation. What I haven't seen as yet is any of the adverse reaction profiles. And that is simply something that we will also be monitoring based upon the Pharmacovigilance Committee. And we don't only monitor what's happening locally, but we also monitor what's happening internationally, because we need to know if there's something that we need to protect our population against.
All right, so this brings me now to the numbers that we're seeing now, the increased numbers. I will leave the maths for the Ministry of Health, because I don't understand the maths really with the dashboard. But let's get to there's an increase. Is that, in BAMP's opinion, and from the new strains that we're seeing, from the Delta, the Alpha, the Gamma, we know that they're present here. Is that as a result of these strains that we're seeing an increase of cases in this country?
Anecdotally, we can make assumptions, but in science, we really don't like to make assumptions. We like to have evidence. And the reason that BAMP has really suggested not only PCR testing and surveillance monitoring, but more importantly, genomic sequencing, is so that we can not only know that we have COVID here on the island locally, but exactly what variants in the country we have, and how are our persons, our population presenting. Certainly our environment is different, our genetic profile is different, our disease burden is different, and for every single population, how a disease affects that population will be different. And so it's extremely important for us to have very robust genetic profiling, so that we know if we know, for instance, the Delta variant is more transmissible than COVID wild type, or the first type of COVID that presented back at the beginning of the pandemic. However, we really don't know how it will present in our population. Anecdotally, we can say sort of looks the same. Some persons will have GI symptoms, so you will get nausea, vomiting, loose bowel movements. Certainly, we are seeing that in the pediatric population, but we're also seeing it in the adult population. But we want to be able to confirm that scientifically. And so that is why it's really important. And that's why we push and continue to push for genomic profiling and community surveillance by PCR.
So we don't have any data from overseas with the Delta variant that we can have a jump start here to see that this is what we need to look for in Barbados?
Yeah, certainly there's lots of data for the Delta variant, and not just the Delta variant, there's also now the Delta Plus, okay? So this disease is really not waiting for anyone, but the presentation of the disease certainly affects, we're seeing younger persons being affected, we are seeing persons obviously who are unvaccinated being affected, and we're seeing, in addition to some of the more traditional symptoms of cough and very, very significant lethargy. Cough is usually a very late presentation. So we don't want you to wait until you have that dry cough. We actually want that as soon as you're feeling unwell. If you know, for instance, you have not been wearing your mask when you go out into the population, or you go out to the supermarket and you're feeling unwell, we want to normalize persons actually going to get tested. But the symptomatology has maintained some of its features, but not all. And now we're seeing an increasing rise in GI presentation of the disease. So you shouldn't take, for instance, if previously you had nausea and vomiting, or even some diarrhea around this time, which is generally some of the times that we may see a little blip in terms of gastroenteritis, but you also now have to really consider, could this be COVID?
So has BAMP moved towards speaking to the Ministry of Health, getting some of these vaccines in office and administering them privately? Because the program is all at the polyclinics. There's one program. There's a vaccine bus. There's different places that you can go. But wouldn't it be helpful if BAMP got involved? You give them some vaccines. You have a patient list. So you should be able to call your patients, similar to when my dentist calling me and telling me it's time for my appointment, to look at your patients, see the most vulnerable, and reach out to them. Because if there's one thing I know for sure, we listen to our doctors, unless you want a second opinion. But most people, they don't even ask what's inside the medication when you scribble on the prescription. They go and say, my doctor said I need X, Y, and Z. They go and take it. Should the doctors be playing a major role in the vaccine rollout from the private aspect of things?
Absolutely, I completely agree with you. And that is something that we have suggested from the very beginning when we found out that COVID vaccines were coming to the country. However, I must also admit, given the fact that we do not have unlimited supply of the vaccine locally, essentially a decision was made at a political level to ensure that those most vulnerable be vaccinated first. And I could understand that because we don't want to put our elderly population at risk. For instance, we don't want to put doctors who may be treating persons coming into the clinic, both COVID related and non COVID related, at risk to then potentially spread the disease profile. So that is why a decision was made at that time, and this is across the board for nurses, persons working in courts, other healthcare workers, the elderly populations, elderly persons within nursing homes, persons within prisons, stuff like that, which are what we call protected populations or high risk populations, to ensure that those persons are protected first so that we can try to minimize the possibility of spread. But yes, ideally, that is what we should be aiming for, where you can have the convenience of turning up in the privacy of your doctor's office to have your COVID-19 vaccine.
Well,
And certainly it would also require, if I must say, that there should be a feedback mechanism to actually have this information re-entered into the public healthcare system, because it's not just about providing a person with the vaccine and sending them on their way, but really to ensure that the entire chain of custody, the entire pathway of getting that information fed back into public health. So for instance, someone doesn't get vaccinated twice, once at the polyclinic and then in their private office, that all of that is done.
Okay, so we do have to take a break, and we'll be right back with some more questions for you. Welcome back. We are talking with Dr. Adana Grandison, first Vice President of BAP. She also sits on the BAP COVID-19 Task Force. We do have some questions for you coming in via WhatsApp. And one question is if the person is there asking, as doctors, would you all like to do testing, or do you prefer the public health system? Aren't some people not getting tested because of privacy concerns?
Certainly, there are some doctors that are performing testing privately. So let me just state that up front. And so if it is that you do not wish for privacy reasons to enter the public health care system, you can. However, the public health care system, or even which is at the, like for instance, the polyclinics, or even the testing center that is at the gymnasium, that ensures to maintain privacy. Okay, those persons will capture your information, and then certainly it is inputted into a central repository, which we call the Shape app, and that Shape app stores your information confidentially. So from that standpoint, either mechanism can be used to access testing in Barbados.
Okay, well, I'm hoping that after that discussion about doctors getting access to vaccines is something that the powers that be will be listening to, because I feel that a lot of Barbadians will be comfortable and maybe be more even convinced by their doctors to take a vaccine if we go that route. I understand what you meant about the most vulnerable, but I believe we kind of passed the stage and we're seeing the numbers dropping off now, lining up to be vaccinated, so you may have to like switch now to plan B. The other question now, I wanted BAMP's thoughts on the lockdown and the curfew, but we'll take this question here first and then we can answer that. Joanne, I believe we would continue to see different faces with COVID over time and there would be a booster shot down the road. What are your thoughts on that particular message from that WhatsApper?
We are still in quite early days, but if it is that this virus is operating like any other virus, there is the possibility, and there has been some discussion about a booster shot. And certainly that is why internationally, not just here in Barbados, but internationally, there is a drive to get everyone vaccinated as quickly as possible. The time that you take to vaccinate your entire population and get everyone covered, once that increases, you continue to increase the possibility of the virus actually mutating and causing more severe variants to be born. And so what we really want to encourage is that person present to get vaccinated so that we can actually try to stall, or what we would call in medicine, starve the virus. You should sort of think about it as if you had, as kids, we would put several little, for scientific research purposes, we would put several little matchsticks all in a line, and then we would light one match at the end of the line. In order for all of the matches to burn, all of the matches must be standing next to each other. If we remove one of the matches from that line, it is virtually impossible to continue that fire. Okay? And what we really want to do is disrupt, because every single vaccinated person within that lineup is a matchstick that has been removed to prevent the spread of the virus. And that's what we really want to do.
Okay, so the WhatsApper actually took me into the question I'd asked earlier pertaining to the curfew and the government's position now in handling this upsurge in cases, putting us on a 2-week curfew to monitor the situation. The WhatsApper here is asking, hi Joanne, can the doctor tell us what is BAMP's position on the new protocols that are in place? Do they think it's good enough, especially since it seems as though most recent cases have come from a church, although we are all allowed to go to church?
And I can understand that concern. That's a very real concern. Now, in public health, we generally tend to prefer to do harsh, quick measures that can abruptly stop or arrest a situation. And so BAP's position currently is that once we see an increase in cases, and it's not just the physical increase in cases, the number that we're concerned about, but it is the trend of number, the amount of positives within the total amount of tests being taken at any given point in time. And when we look at those percentages, so positivity rates and stuff like that, we then have to determine if those numbers are going to be triggers for increased lockdown measures or removing some of the lockdown measures. But we at BAMP, we actually would recommend, and if anyone has been following the news, our president, Dr. Williams, actually stated that she would actually recommend, and we completely agree, a short, hard lockdown that would actually arrest, and so that we can get this entire situation under control, and then slowly relax measures. And this is something that we're seeing. Even WHO is saying, if you need to provide these measures to ensure that the good works that you have done to achieve what you have accomplished so far within your country and maintain that, those measures need to be taken. And but we do also understand that Barbados is in a very ticklish situation economically, and there's also a psychological component to a lockdown. And there are some persons who generally are not coping well with the isolation or social distancing, and this is very, very
Repeatedly,
real.
I should say, because
Absolutely.
here's the thing, and here's my position on it. This is a year and a half almost. I felt, I still feel, it was handled poorly internationally because it's a pandemic, and you were fighting it in silos. So you have one country with one set of rules and an airplane with one set of rules, and then you're obviously going to open and stop and start and stop. You can't fight a pandemic unless you're fighting it globally, which I'm surprised that world leaders did not get together with the United Nations and the World Health Organization and the G20 and all these other people to say, look, do a harsh shutdown. People talked about, oh, the world will suffer. No, you can still move goods in ports. But we need to starve the virus. But you can't starve it in one country and then allow other people to come into your country, and then that other country has a different set of rules. One airline says no vaccination. The other airline says, okay, half of you can be vaccinated, show us a certificate, but then you're sitting next to someone who's not vaccinated, who has to go through a different regime. So this sounds confusing because it's confusing. So for me, the harsh lockdown, yes, I agree with you. Get it done and over with. But then when you open back and people slip up, are we going to do the harsh thing again? So I understand what you were saying. I agree with you. But I'm sorry that we are at this point in 2021 where the world did not make a better decision. Leaders did not make a better decision for the very people who are suffering. And that was to get into a room and decide how we're going to fight this virus with the medical team together with, all the powers that be. That's my position on that. It's not too late to do it.
No, it's not too late, but I will say this here, Joanna. We're not only fighting COVID, we're also fighting another pandemic, and that's the pandemic of misinformation. There is so much misinformation out there. And remember that patient education and population education, any matter, that is due, because we've never seen SARS-CoV-2 presenting to our world before. And so there was a lot of misinformation and initially a paucity of information so that persons can be guided effectively. And I believe that that is what was responsible initially for the very slow uptake in terms of taking it very seriously to move. There are a lot of persons who may have thought, oh, this is just another common cold or another flu virus. It's nothing really to be serious about. Or it started off in China. It will never get over to Barbados or to this side of the world. We are safe. We don't have to put measures in place. And that's really not what it is. And it does require a global collaboration. I do agree with you. But I think it also requires, especially upon us healthcare workers, and certainly you within the media, to continuously educate the public. And that's why a program, for instance, like this is so important, because it puts the information out there, trusted information out there, that persons can be continuously educated to understand why are we making the decisions we are making. Okay. But I do have to agree.
Someone was asking on WhatsApp, what part of the body does COVID-19 impact in children? And I think that from the discussions, so that we can pull it together and get the facts, that GI was just one of the symptoms that you were seeing recently in children. Would that be the Delta variant, or that we don't know what variant that would be?
So symptomatology for COVID-19 disease in children, you can get, as I said before, GI symptoms. However, COVID virus affects not just in children, but in adults as well, the entire body. Okay? And that is why, for instance, Miss C presented and initially had quite inertia for persons to diagnose, and this is internationally, because it didn't affect one organ system. It wasn't just affecting the lungs. We saw persons, children, where it affected the heart, it affected the skin, it affected the GI tract. So it is not as easy to pin down or to recognize very early, especially in children, because you may not have the typical presentation of symptoms. So for instance, a child might be present, for instance, with a myositis, which is an infection of the muscle or inflammation of the muscle. Or a child may present with GI symptoms. So these things even cause education to play a bigger role in terms of really staying on the forefront in terms of what we know is there, and then also scientifically sharing the information of what we see, which is, I have to agree with you when you ask your very first question, are we collecting that data that can inform our decision making? And that is why it's so important, because then we can share that information with our global community, and we can share that information with the doctors here in Barbados.
Well, Dr. Adana Grandison, there's never enough time, but we're going to ask you to stay for a couple more minutes if you don't mind, because some people want some clarity on some various things. When you said about a harsh shutdown, I guess that's what you mean. What are you talking about? Going back to shopping in alphabetical order, or earlier curfew? You want to expand on that recommendation from BAP, how that would look like, what that would look like?
So we know, for instance, that the alphabet system has posed some problems, and also some significant, it has acted as a significant stressor for our population. Although when asked, I had remember seeing on the news when persons were asked about if they would resort to, if they had to, they actually said, although I wouldn't like to, I would. And that's generally how Barbadians tend to think, if we know that it's going to be for a better outcome and a return to normalcy a lot faster. But certainly we have recommended the use of technology to inform the decision-making processes in terms of how much persons, especially with population density monitoring. For instance, we know that you may have different size supermarkets, and we will also know that on average, a person may take, let's say, 45 minutes to 1 hour to do big shopping, not your weekly shopping, but if you're doing monthly shopping. And that's the person who's probably going to stroll around, look at new items, etc., etc. Now, that certainly changes in a pandemic, and I'm sure that if we were collecting some of this information technologically, we would be able to see what are the behaviors and habits of our shoppers, for instance. We would be able to know what times do persons generally present to our supermarkets. How many persons can we have in our supermarket at any given time? Is it safe to have more than, let's say, 50 persons in our supermarket, depending upon the size, for population monitoring to ensure that every single person maintains a 6-foot distance? These are the type of things that we need to monitor. And so that is why we have recommended not just technology in terms of population density, but we've also, recommended technology in terms of contact tracing. Certainly it is important. I know there are a lot of persons who are frustrated by sometimes going out and using a pen, a trusted pen, and writing. If, for instance, we do have a lot of disease burden within our country, and there's a lot of transmissibility of that virus, do we want to be potentially exposing persons repeatedly to picking up something as simple as this that can transmit the virus, okay, on the surface? Or would we use the technology which we know almost everybody in Barbados walks around with, a cell phone? And if you could download, for instance, a nice convenient app that would assist you and assist the Ministry of Health, for instance, in terms of being able to say, well, I went to Garrison Savannah on Saturday at 10 o'clock in the morning, and I did my walking there. And while I was there, I happened to be in the presence and in close proximity of 15 other persons. And you can track that for 15, 20, 30 days. And coming out of, let's say, on your day 25, there is some person that you have been in contact with, that you have been in close proximity with, that has become positive. I'm sure that most Barbadians would want to know, one, I may have been exposed, and two, I need to go and get tested quickly so that I can get the help that I need as quickly as possible. Because that's what it's really about. I know certainly there is the concern of privacy. A lot of persons say, but I don't want everybody in my business, right? And so that is why it certainly would be something voluntary. But again, technology for contact tracing, technology for proximity sensing, and then also using the data that we get, whether it's from the PCR testing, and that's why the laboratory component is so important, because you want to know, what is our PCR test showing? Are we getting more persons with low CT values versus persons with very high CT values who are not as infectious? Are we getting persons presenting to our country with a typical pattern of disease, or are we seeing something new and different? Are we seeing persons that are presenting, for instance, with COVID-19 disease as well as dengue together? All of these things we need to know. And the only way we can get to know that is if we are collecting data.
We're going to come right back after the break with more from Dr. Grandison. We'll be back. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. For those of you now joining us, we're speaking to Dr. Adana Grandison on COVID-19 and its current impact in Barbados. You're invited to call 228-5563. We're getting a lot of WhatsApp messages, and if you want to speak to the doctor quickly before she goes, 228-5563 is the number. Dr. Grandison, another question coming off the heels of what we were discussing just now about contact tracing and etc. Now, COVID-19 is a pandemic. It's not a niche virus in one section. It's everywhere. And we do respect the fact that there is patient-doctor privacy. And that should always be, because we can't change that. But when you're talking about a pandemic, and I said this in my last show and I maintain this, and hopefully the powers that be will hear, an outbreak of COVID in a public space deserves an explanation and information about the public space. I don't think that we should be announcing one and not the other. So if it's in a private space, if we talk about family clusters, I believe that is no one's business, and that is then when you're you're kind of going into the privacy of a patient, because you certainly don't want to identify a home. And we get that. But if you are in a public establishment and there's been an outbreak of COVID-19, the public has a right to know, because the public can then help with the contact tracing by stating, I was there. I was there. So let me come forward instead of waiting for the people who work there to give you information, some of them not willing to, some of them may not even remember, obviously. You're not going to remember every person that came in. Why not let the public know so that we're all in this together. So if we're all in this together, we should make sure that that information is made public. Your thoughts from Matt's perspective?
Well, Diane, certainly we would want to have that information as soon as possible from the public standpoint, and that is why we recommend technology. Because what technology would afford us is the privacy of the patient, and also to a certain extent the privacy of the institution. And I'll tell you why. It's okay on one end to know the institution, but it can also cause a bit of stigmatization with the disease profile, and unnecessarily so. It should never be the case, but we have seen this here with a lot of diseases that have presented historically, HIV to name one. Okay, and so we need to be very, very mindful of how we disseminate that information into the public space, and that is why we have suggested to sort of move away, especially when you're seeing increasing numbers, from a human resource to contact trace, which can be delayed, whether it's on the end of the institution or on the end of public health, because it requires someone to communicate with someone else, okay? And if it is that you can't get a phone number, you can't get a name, you can't remember where you put the book that was at the front of the desk, all of these are deterrents, and sometimes can even slow down your contact tracing effort and make it quite difficult. And all it requires is just one single component to be missing. And that one single component out in your population, that person out in population with time, can affect a lot of persons. And that is why we actually recommend technology as the solution, so that you can have real-time information about the presence of a person in a space. And if that person has been in the presence of someone else who has been exposed and has now tested positive, that immediately and real time again, alert can go to any person that has been in that space, asking them to present at either the gymnasium, the polyclinic, or any of the private testing facilities, so that they may know their status, so that we can then quarantine persons in a very timely manner, versus, for instance, having persons still at home and thinking that, well, it probably didn't happen to me. And then 2 to 3 days later, when a public health official has finally got your contact information to contact you and say, well, I think you need to actually quarantine. So it really assists not just the institutions and the public health system, but it also assists the persons within your population.
Well, I've seen a lot of businesses come forward and put information out there declaring that some of their workers have tested positive. And I want to say kudos to those businesses, because when they open back, they still had a whole set of people. People respect the truth. And we can see publicly that they've been cleaning their establishments, and they open back for business. And we go back there to do our business. So that's why I'm encouraging as best as I can this is to help, so that we all know, minus, again, the patient privacy when it comes to family clusters. That's up to a family to go and put it on Facebook. It's up to them. But we have an interesting WhatsApper here that the interesting thing that they come in. How do we know that it's not revolution of human sexual behavior that has weakened human immunity and made vulnerable to all those diseases? Let's face humans are engaging in all, let's face it, they're trying to say, humans are engaging in all kinds of erotic behaviors, pushing it literally and figuratively to unprecedented levels. Something's got to give. I have no idea what they're talking about somewhere there in the universe, but maybe you can translate that from a medical perspective or psychological perspective.
I'm actually stumped by this question, but I'm not so sure that it is simply based to sexual behaviors. I will say that it is based broadly, in part, not in total, to environmental factors. Certainly how we conduct ourselves in terms of our dietary intake, our exercise practices, how we intake water, for instance. What do we do? If, for instance, you know that you may have a family history of a particular disease profile, are you very actively engaging in screening to ensure that you determine if you do have that disease, as well. And if you don't have that disease, to continue to monitor to see if it presents. But I can't say that I have seen anywhere where the sexual practices specifically has caused a weakened immune system. Unless, for instance, the listener is talking about, for instance, a person who has engaged in multiple sexual partners or even one sexual partner,
Understood.
and then they have been exposed
Unnecessarily.
to, for instance, a disease that may cause them to become immunocompromised. But I
Oh,
can't say that I have seen that within the scientific data for COVID-19 disease.
okay. Well, I want to thank you, but I want to give you at least a couple of seconds to just wrap up. If you want to tell Barbados to convince them the importance of getting a vaccine against COVID-19 in a couple of seconds, I want you to make an appeal.
Yeah, sure. So, Barbados, I really want to urge you to take this opportunity, not just for the sake of yourself, because a lot of persons say, I'll do it for myself, but it's also your family members, the persons within your communities, persons within your workplace, that we also want to have essentially a brother's keeper type of effect where we are helping everyone so that we will not return to the old normal, but certainly something close to that, a new normal, and something that does not have as much uncertainty and causes as much stress to the rest of the population, which, as we see, persons generally don't deal with uncertainty very well. So I want to make that special appeal to our population, not just to get vaccines, however, but also if you suspect in the very slightest that you have any symptoms that may be in keeping with COVID, or you're just not feeling well, to present for testing, go and get tested.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dana Grandison, First Vice President of Barbados Medical Association of Medical Practitioners, as well as a member of BAMP's COVID-19 Task Force. Thank you so much, and I hope you join us again for more information in the next couple of weeks, because COVID isn't going anywhere anytime soon, obviously.
Thank you so much, Ms. Haig. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Now, well, that was an interesting conversation with the doctor, and if you see me fanning a little bit, and I'm hoping it's not a mosquito in the studio, it must be just a little fly, so forgive me if you think I'm just doing like that. So someone in production saved me. So we're going to speak to Mr. Andrew Greene, MCTV's officer. We know that they've had some challenges after the passing of Elsa with antennas, etc. So we're going to speak to him, and then, of course, after that, we're going to speak to Sergeant Seibert Johnson. He's filling in for Inspector Rodney, Acting Inspector Rodney Innes, and we know him as the PRO for the Royal Barbados Police Force. And we want to speak about crime and where we're at and what are the plans. So we want to hear from you, 228-5563. Send us your WhatsApp messages, 228-5562. If you have a problem with your MCTV All Now is the time. Don't call and hold on for 2 minutes. Call us, 228-5563. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We're with Mr. Andrew Greene, a former schoolmate of mine. I haven't seen him for quite some time. He is the Chief Officer of MCTV, and I must say that I'm a happy subscriber, but we'll talk about my problems during the show as well. Welcome, Andrew, to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Now, this morning on my way down, I heard an ad talking about some problems that you would have had after the storm Elsa, and your subscribers of some of your challenges and you're working on them. Could you tell us some of the challenges you would have had after the storm?
Yes, I will do so. I will share some data with you, but first and foremost, I want to emphasize that what I will share in terms of data, that behind that data are people who are our customers and also our customer service representatives who have been feeling the calls that we receive from customers following the passage of the storm. It has been a difficult situation, made so because we had significant damage at 5 of our transmission sites. Our engineering team has worked assiduously to resolve those issues at the transmission sites, which obviously will impact customers right across the island. That work has been completed to a satisfactory degree, and I extend thanks to them for the tremendous amount of work that they've done in a very short period of time. Specifically, within 5 to 6 days, that work was completed to get our transmission sites back on air. Now, customers may be wondering why it is that we have gotten up our repeater sites, but we have not been able to get back. They have not been able to get back their service. The reason for that is that whilst the transmission site addresses the larger issue of all customers being able to access the service, individual customers will have issues such as down antennae, problems with the cable becoming dislodged or waterlogged to some degree. And as a result of that, we have to make individual visits to the customer premises in order to resolve those issues. And that is what we've been doing over the last few days since the storm. Our work actually began on July 3rd, the day after the storm, where our subcontractors were out in the field seeking to resolve the issues that we've been faced with. About 20% of our subscriber base has been impacted. So far, we have addressed a significant amount of those individuals, but essentially what has transpired is, in terms of the generation of service calls, is that we have amassed some 4 months of service calls within the last 10 days. And naturally, it will take some time for us to resolve all of those customer issues, be it a down antenna, be it the antenna not being aligned in order to pick up the transmission, etc. And as I said, we're working assiduously to get those issues resolved as quickly as we can. In the interim, customers will know that they're...
Before you go on, what exactly are repeaters? When you said repeaters earlier,
the repeaters, we have one main transmission site, which is at Sturgis. And then just like how you have cell towers across the island, we have various transmission sites of a smaller nature that will take that signal that is coming from Sturgis and essentially repeat it across the island in order to reach pockets of customers in areas that the Sturgis site will not cover. Because though Barbados is said to be flat, we have many instances where even though the tower is at the correct height that would enable it to cover the entire population of Barbados, there are pockets because of valleys that will obtain in the landmass that will result in us not being able to service those customers, except we take that signal from Sturgis with another tower and then beam it into that particular area. And 5 out of those repeater sites were damaged significantly by the storm.
Where exactly and who exactly that would have impacted? What areas in Barbados?
Those primarily affected St. George, St. Christchurch, areas of St. Lucie, St. Peter, St. James, and also the Greater Bridgetown area. But as I said, we have resolved those larger issues in terms of the repeater sites, and we are now focused on the individual customer needs. And the difficulty that we've had is that, as I said, we need to send a technician to each customer who has a down antenna. In some instances, some of our subscribers have asked, and we have given them the authority to resolve the issues themselves. We've had customers who've came in and received brackets in order to re-erect the antennae, and that has worked well. And I want to emphasize that that is an option that is available to our customers who may have someone who will be able to resolve the problem for them. And once that is done, we issue a credit to that customer, just as if we were doing it on their behalf.
Okay, we have a caller for you, Andrew, on the line. Good morning, Face It and Fix It. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Are you hearing me, please?
Loud and clear.
Yes, I'm
Okay,
hearing
yes.
you.
Good morning. What I would like to say, gentlemen, how would you be able to have your TV change by changing the antenna? I think is that what I want to say. My TV is off 2 weeks, going 3 now, and my heart is breaking. I live alone. There's no one here with me. And my TV was my only company, and every day I am sorry and not ashamed to say my heart is grieving. So I would like to know, what can I do? My antenna was one of those tall ones. It fall right across the house and hook into a tree on something, and all you can hear at night is the wire, the cable jumping across the rooftop and so. And I call in, and and everybody tell me it would be long, and it's becoming longer and longer.
Don't put hang up, Andrew. Is there something when it's your actual television is still working though, but it's the multi-choice that is out with the antenna, correct?
The TV will work, yes, but without the antenna, it's not working.
Okay, Andrew, something that we can do for this lady today?
Yes, not today because we have assigned the work for today already. But those instances are ones that we are paying particular attention to, particularly if as has been said, the antenna is laying across the roof, because we will not want that to cause any damage to the roof. So once we have her information, then we will ensure that we get our team out in order to address that issue.
We're taking,
as I said,
we're taking the
20%.
information now to give to you, but I don't want to hold you to it. If you can't do it today, I can really publicly ask you, can she see someone tomorrow? You can hear her heart is breaking, and it's the only company she has. Once you get the information, can you realistically get it done for her tomorrow, providing it's not a major job?
I suspect that it may be major, but as I said, once we have the information, we can reach out to her to see if we can get it resolved either tomorrow or Saturday, because our contractors are working beyond the call of duty in order to get these issues resolved.
So your restoration right now is... Go on.
No, I was saying that is why I said in the beginning, I wanted to emphasize that behind each of the service requests that we have are individuals, customers who are known to our customer service representatives. And this is what makes it so difficult for us, knowing that we have the customer did not give her name, but knowing that we have customers like her who are dependent upon our service, and we want to help. We want to help as quickly as possible, but given the circumstances in terms of the sheer number of requests that we have not been able to get to everyone within this first week. But I can say to you that we've already satisfied the requests of hundreds of our subscribers, and we're working to continue to do so. Part of that exercise has been to engage other subcontractors who we've worked with in the past, so that we can augment our team in order to meet the necessary requirements to satisfy our customers.
No, well, I can tell you for sure we have her name, her location, her telephone number. And if I know you,
Wonderful.
Andrew Greene, even if it's not today, I know it's going to be done. And I'm pretty much sure it's going to be done tomorrow, knowing you, Mr. Greene. We do have some comments there coming in for you from on WhatsApp. This comment is saying, what is happening with MCTV? It's been sticking on some of the channels. Is that part of the problem from the storm?
That is part of the problem, because even though the antenna may be erect, however, it could be that during the high winds that it was shifted. So once it has been shifted to some degree, then you're going to get that problem of sticking. Again, that is another truck roll that we will have to execute in order to ensure that that problem is resolved.
We got another WhatsApper here. It says, I find that MCTV has sound problems, especially during the news. Low and then really, really loud. So is that something from the MCTV part, or?
That
It all comes through MCTV, I should say, because
yes,
Channel 8 comes through MCTV.
Yes, it does come through MCTV, but that is an industry problem where we have ads specifically that tend to be of a higher volume than what the normal transmission of the channel would be. So that is why you get those jumps in the audio range, especially particularly during some programs. And that is a situation that we are faced with as a whole. The entire industry, rather, is faced with as a whole. But we will do what we can. I know that it was an issue that RTV had in the past that we've worked to address. But if it's something that is still happening, then we can seek to address that internally with respect to the news, if the news that is being referenced is our TV8 news.
We have another WhatsApper for you. This person is saying, as soon as will we get a reduction in charges for the lack of service? Good question.
It is.
Can they apply?
Mm-hmm. It is it's not an application that needs to be done. Mm-hmm. Once the report has been made to us that there's a service outage, we immediately, and I emphasize immediately, stop billing to that subscriber. So if that subscriber has our basic package, for example, and is out of service for 5 days or 10 days, the credit applicable to those number of days will be applied to the account. What is not understood, and I need to emphasize, is that that credit, depending upon how many channels are affected, like in the instance of the customer who has some channels sticking, that it varies dependent upon the number of channels impacted. So if you have your basic package, for example, we take the number of channels within the basic package, and that is divided by the amount of money that you're paying for that particular package. So that you will see from the credit that you get that the daily cost of the service is almost inconsequential when you're looking at one particular channel rather than the entire package of services.
Well, we have another WhatsApper for you. Sorry, Andrew, but a lot of people want to get to you. Good day. We called MCTV to report no services Monday, July 5th. We were told they could not tell us when they can come. Do you have to call back and report repeatedly to see if they come, or I guess they're once it's logged, then?
Absolutely not. And I want to emphasize that once you have made your initial report, then the rest is left up to us to ensure that we get a technician out to you as quickly as possible. I would also want to say with respect to that message is that I know that customer may think that they got in contact with us early, but by Monday, July 5th, we had over 500 service calls that were waiting to be addressed. And we've been seeking to do it. We've been seeking to do it in the order that it has been received, notwithstanding that we know that there are some customers who we've had to treat to very quickly because we know of situations. As I said, our customer service representatives have built up, because of the loyalty of our customer base, relationships with various customers. And we know of instances where, for example, you might have a situation where, like the lady who called earlier is living alone in her house. That is her only company. We have families who have a relative who's living with them that may have Alzheimer's or dementia, that the TV is what, is their their only source of entertainment and what keeps them focused. And we try as best as we possibly can to take into consideration those situations and address them as quickly as we possibly can.
Well, you're also impacting a person's ability to watch our show. But
absolutely.
Yes, but for those of you watching, you can still catch us on YouTube and Facebook and listen to us on the radio. But a lot of people at home, because there are a lot of people working from home now, and if they take a little break, I certainly know that they might want to keep abreast with the programming that CBC has. So you got to hurry up on that one. But I want to ask you some questions now pertaining to my personal experience and with the remote controls. Can you just get, because they don't last all of, because a remote control at some point you have to replace. Can you come to CBC and purchase a remote control for your box if your remote control isn't working, or is it repaired?
You can purchase remote controls from us. Sometimes we don't have in stock because of the issues that we're having across the world now with getting things here as quickly as possible. So we currently are awaiting a shipment of remote controls, but we do keep some that are refurbished so that customers who have, for example, an emergency where one remote or more than one remote is not working, we provide that refurbished remote to them at no cost.
Do you know the funny thing about a remote control is that you would walk all over the house to look for your remote control and not to take 2 steps in front of the TV to change it on the box. It's a universal problem, people. We like our remote controls. We will walk past the TV to find the remote control. But we're going to be back, Andrew, after the break, and we'll come back with some more questions for you. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It to our viewers and listeners in Barbados and around the world. You're watching us on CBC TV 8 if you're listening to us on Q100.7 FM or on social media, Facebook page at CBC Barbados or on YouTube. We are speaking to Mr. Andrew Greene, Chief MCTV Officer. He's talking to us about some of the issues that they would have experienced after the storm. And they got a lot of people, and he's trying his best. The company, they're trying their best to get to everyone. Andrew, can you give us an idea as to the percentage of restoration to date out of you're at 50%, 60% of your customers that have issues?
We have overall, in terms of the percentage of those impacted, it's been around 20%. Of those 20% that have been impacted, we've resolved issues for about 20% of them.
Okay.
So we're working at it, as I said, daily. We're working at it, but I want to emphasize that we are aware, we're very conscious that behind those numbers are customers who have been loyal to us throughout the years, some 10, 20, 30 years, who've been loyal to us, and we're doing our best to get to them as quickly as possible because we greatly appreciate their loyalty.
Well, I want to add into that because I've been around since STV days when it had 4 channels. And I'm still, okay, so I still subscribe. We have a lot of WhatsAppers, so we're going to try to get them to you as quickly as possible. Can we expect more sports channels anytime soon? Example, being sports.
We're constantly reviewing our options in order to offer more to our customers. So the answer to that, short answer to that is yes. But what needs to be known also is that not every international channel that is available with rights for the Caribbean region. That is a battle that we continue to fight. It is some of the channels that were previously not available to us have subsequently become available. But as I said, there are those that are specific to, particularly the US, very specific to that market. And there are no providers that are allowed to carry those particular channels, even though sometimes you can access them via the internet.
But do you, and again, this is only to help MCTV be better, because there are times where there are channels today, and then tomorrow there's no channel, and I have to hear my daughter Sky's grandfather, Joy, check UTV, you got channel 508, I don't understand, and or, you know, for example, and I'm checking, I'm going like, well, dads, I don't have it either. But then I didn't see anything coming out to state that it's out of the system. Because that can happen sometimes where you make a change and then you don't know. Just saying that you could let us know.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, we do try to do that as quickly as possible. There's some instances that we know before it happens, and then there are instances because of changes in business models and changes in service providers that we don't know. For example, we've seen over the last year significant, and I mean significant, consolidation in the industry in terms of programming. And what is happening is that a lot of these entities have gotten bigger as a result of getting bigger, or better demands on us in terms of rates. And meanwhile, given the situation that we've had over the last, 10, 11, we've not been able to increase rates, nor will we consider doing that at this time, because we know the difficulties that our customers have been facing. So even though our rates for these channels have increased, we've tried our best to ensure that we can maintain the rate that our customers pay.
Well, that's good to know that CBC is doing that in these difficult times. We do have a caller for you, Andrew. Good morning. Face it and fix it. You are on the air.
Hello, good morning. I've been here waiting for quite a while.
I do apologize.
Yeah, okay. I live in the Grisette area, and I think my antenna feeds from Black Rock. And since I reported it since last week, Monday. I am only getting a few channels, and the ones I'm getting is sticking. The antenna is bent because it's very tall. And it's out of place. And I reported it, and I haven't seen anybody come yet. And there are quite a few of the antennas in this area that has fallen too, and nobody hasn't gotten to them as yet either.
Okay, we also too will take your information as well. But Andrew, can I ask you, if you're in an area, like she says, there are a lot of people with antennas down. Once you're in Grisettes, you stay in Grisettes, using that area as an example, because that's where she was calling from. Would you try to do everybody in that area that day or that week?
Yes, Yes, we're using various models in order to get to customers as quickly as we can. So, for example, we will not have one of our subcontractors traversing from Christchurch to go to Grisettes in order to resolve that problem. That particular job will be assigned to a subcontractor working within that area. But given the extent of the issue that we have, that is why we have not gotten to that customer. As I said, we're doing our best to get to customers as quickly as possible. And once we have received that call, then it is logged and it will be assigned if it hasn't been already.
Okay, so let's talk about bill payments during the pandemic and the fact that there are persons working from home. How much of a challenge that has been, and can you tell us what are our payment options and the places we can pay? Because I know you're limiting the traffic coming into CBC, the cashiers. So if I want to pay my bill, and by the way, I need to pay my bill, but tell us where we can go to get that done.
The options are as they were before, pertaining to shore pay. Also, we have the banks. There are some individuals who complete online banking and can pay through the major banks in Barbados. And also, we've generally out of the lockdown, and as a result of that, we're taking payments here at CBC also.
Oh, you're back at the cashiers are back open
yeah.
at CBC? Okay.
Yeah, cashiers are open. Yes.
Okay, good. We have some WhatsApps for you again. This WhatsApper says, I like my MCTV service. I like the MCTV channels. When will we be able to pause the channels and watch them later? Good question.
That is an excellent question. And I want that particular WhatsApper to know that we like that they're like our channels and they're like our service. That is an area that we're still working on. We started some testing, and my expectation is that once we get out of this situation relative to the pandemic and we start to see a pickup in terms of the economy, etc., we will have the necessary resources in order to invest in that transition that we've been wanting to make now for some time.
Nope.
But yes, that is something that is definitely on the cards with respect to our service.
Okay, we got a call for you, Andrew. You are in the hot seat today. This is Face It and Fix It. You are on the air.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm calling from Marshall Parkinson Road, Fairfield, Black Rock. I'm calling to let you know that my MCTV and my CBC is not on.
Okay, could you want to repeat that address again?
Marshall Parkinson Road, Fairfield, Black Rock.
Okay.
That down behind, Outer Town, the second gate coming from Outer Town.
And you've been out since the storm?
Since the storm, yes, please.
And what have you done to call CBC?
I just called them and they told me they would get to me, but I ain't seen nobody yet. And I here alone by myself. I am a wheelchair. I like to see TV. I can't watch.
Okay, well, the chief will respond. The chief of MCTV is here, so he can respond to you, ma'am. Okay. Andrew?
As I said earlier, we're very conscious of situations such as yours, where you're alone. As you said, you're in a wheelchair also. We know that MCTV is your company, and we'll do our best to get to you as we possibly can. So thank you for sharing that information with us. We will take your specific information, I believe, off here, so that we can follow up with you over the next day or so.
Andrew, coming out of this exercise, would you consider maybe collecting some data with persons like her and the other lady living alone and the elderly, so that if something happens again, you may want to proceed not only in specific areas and do area by area, but sometimes for the most vulnerable, and you could have that on file, because even when it comes to disconnecting, you may know that the person is either something is wrong medically, and that you may want to give them a call. I just think it would be good to have that type of information, especially hearing people who live alone and the elderly, that the TV is the only comfort that they have. You might want to consider.
Yes, I totally agree with you, and I've taken note of that. But at the same time, I can say that given the relationships that our customer service representatives have built up with customers over the years, we know of many of those situations. We may not know all, but we know. I frequently hear, I want you to help this old lady, and they can describe specifically the circumstance that this person is in. So I know that our customer service reps do a great job of taking note of issues such as these, so that we can ensure that any service that is offered is expedited in those circumstances.
Well, I can testify to that, that your reps are pretty good, and you have to be really good if you can identify some of your people as regulars, because I can tell you from time to time, a couple of years ago at another job, I was so busy that I could not tell you when the 15th came, and then I would come home to a blank screen, and then I'm calling and going like, she said, Joanne, this is you? I was like, yes, and not because they knew me from the job, they knew my voice, and every month I'm like, I forgot, but thank God for your service of being able to facilitate with a credit card payment and so on and so forth. You're able to get the service restored. Yes, people, my MCTV got disconnected from time to time. That happens. And but I can see that you're working with more people for the storm, after the storm and in the pandemic, regarding disconnections. Yeah, you have been working with your customers. You want to tell us about the payment plans, etc.?
Yes, we understand the payment plan is determined on an individual level. And so I wouldn't go into the specifics of that, because each circumstance differs. And given our knowledge of the particular subscriber, we look at the payment history. So if we see that some person, have always been current over a period of a year, some people 4 years, 5 years, and they miss a payment, obviously we don't. Whilst the disconnection process is somewhat automated, we know that if that person calls us and indicate that they're having an issue after the service has been disconnected, we can treat to that issue knowing that that customer has been one that has been loyal, that has constantly paid, but they're now having some form of difficulty. And we therefore put arrangements in place in order to enable them to satisfy making payments over a period of time.
Fantastic.
But as I said, that is done on an individual level.
Okay, we have more comments, and we do have a caller. First person here says, good morning. If your MCTV antenna is damaged in a storm, who is responsible for replacement?
We will replace it.
No charge?
No charge.
Fantastic. Next person is, how is MCTV dealing with the surge in devices such as the Fire Stick, which has streaming services? Also, will MCTV be looking at an app?
In answer to the latter question, yes, we are considering that. I spoke earlier of some of the options that we are considering in terms of making an investment relative to MCTV. And insofar as how we're dealing with those, like all service providers, that remains a challenge for us, because we're essentially competing with Fire Stick, for example, which is essentially free. Okay? What we do, however, know, and has been said by many of our subscribers, is that our service does not buffer. We know that when you turn on your MCTV, it is simple, it is effective, and you get exactly what it is that you're requiring of the service. So that for us is one of the points that we emphasize in terms of competition with the Fire Sticks, etc.
Dal, I can tell you this, that is the exact same reason why I keep that choice, multi-choice, because I can't take the buffering, etc., from any other agencies, companies. We have a caller. Good morning, Face It and Fix It. You are on the air. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, good morning. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning
Good
to
morning.
you, Joy and Andrew. I have a volume problem. Sometimes when I go into a channel, the picture comes up, but there's no volume. And I did it with several channels, and there's no volume. Then I go and I switch to another channel. I get a volume, I fidget around, and then I go back into the channel that I really want to watch, and then the volume comes up. And this has been going on for quite a while. What's the cause of that? Is a volume problem? What is it?
It is not an issue that is specific to you. It's an issue that we find across the service in some instances. Some customers do experience that, some don't. What is happening there and I don't want to get too technical with respect to it, but what is happening is that the box box and antenna at that time is losing information, losing data that is responsible for the provision of the audio. So when that happens, you have to channel up and channel back down. That is one of the cures for it. I don't know if you frequently turn on and off your box, but again, sometimes it is good if you keep your box running 24 hours a day. Sometimes it's good to switch off and switch back on so that it can get all of the data that is necessary in order for it to function effectively. So it's essentially like similar to a cell service where sometimes you're going through a particular area and you have a dropout of the service. That is similar to what is happening there, where the data, all of the data needed to provide the audio to you is not being received by the box.
Okay, we have 2 more WhatsApps quickly, Andrew, because I know we got to wrap you up soon. What if I had no electricity since the storm? Will MCTV give me a rebate? I believe you answered that, but you can repeat. No, you answered about damaged equipment. We're talking about electricity. Yes. No fault of yours.
That is absolutely no fault of the customer. We know that there are still a few instances where that is the case. And of course, that is what we will do. But we can only do it if we have the report and we have the wherewithal to verify that that is in fact the case. Not that I'm doubting that is the case, but we do know the areas, according to Barbados Light and Power, where there are still issues, and we will address that accordingly. So that is not an issue at all.
Okay. Any possibility of seeing current cricket series at home, since virtual environment, even on channel other than 108? So any other possibility of seeing any current cricket series at home apart from 108?
That is a deep discussion that goes into the matter of rights, and in particular sporting rights, which are one of the most difficult areas that exists within this business. Rights in particular are generally not available for sports, and when they're available, they come at an extreme cost. So if you don't see it on your service, that is the reason why you're not seeing it, because we don't have the rights to show it.
Okay. Well, Andrew, I will tell you this was a very, very good conversation between the Face It and Fix It show with MCTV. A lot of questions, a lot of motivation too, because when I leave here, I will be going to the cashier outside and be updating my multi-choice bill. And I'm not just saying that I don't have any other options. My choice is multi-choice. So I want to thank you and the team at MCTV, the customer reps, and the girls in the accounts department for constantly reminding me that I am late with my bill. But they actually do a pretty good job at making sure that you're restored. And I say that, and in all seriousness, sometimes people can't afford, and you're working with people. And the good thing is that when you do work with them, from the flip of a switch, they can get back a service once you can show that you have paid something or whatever the arrangement was, so they don't have to feel like if they have to pay all. And I find that your section works with people quite well with that. So final word?
And thank you very much. And again, I want to emphasize that we are aware that behind each of these calls for service that we have is an individual who we care about, an individual who has supported us over the years, and we will get to you. Absolutely, we will get to you as quickly as we possibly can to ensure that your service is restored.
Well, thank you, Andrew. The value. Go ahead.
I was going to say we understand the value to you, and we ourselves value you as a customer. So thank you for your patience.
And thank you, Andrew, for coming to face the situation and you're fixing the situation, and that's what counts. I am going to hold you to the old lady, and because I'm going to check up on
Absolutely.
that. And we want to be able to report. We do understand it is a process, but we want to be able to report that our callers and people who send us messages that we can follow up that these situations and problems were fixed. Thank you so much. We'll be back with
You're
more
welcome.
after the break. Thank you. Welcome back to Face It and Fix It. We have Sergeant Seibert Johnson. He is sitting in for Acting Inspector Rodney Innes. We are going to talk crime this morning, and I'll tell you this will not be our only segment. We're hoping to do this as often as possible to help address the situation as a nation. Welcome, Sergeant Seibert Johnson, to Face It and Fix It. Welcome again. Good morning. Good morning.
How are you doing? Are you hearing me?
I can hear you now.
Good. How are you doing?
Okay, so we are going to talk about some of the cases that we're seeing, and not specific cases, but we're going to speak in general about our crime situation in Barbados. Unfortunately, yesterday, we had another incident of a report of a person found dead in the Black Rock area. And do you have any statistics to hand? Where are we now in terms of murders in this country as of July 15th today?
No, I don't have those figures with me at the moment, but I believe they can be obtained. But I don't have them with me at the moment.
Okay, that's okay. We as we said earlier, this will not be your first, last time. This is your second time, but we want to make this like a series speaking to the police on the crime situation in an effort to see how we, the public, can help. Now, recently, we've seen an increase in the accidents and unfortunately resulted in some deaths. And as a person who reports on traffic in the morning, what do you want to tell motorists for these types of situations that we're seeing? 3 persons unfortunately lost their lives in a matter of 24 hours in Barbados a couple of days ago. What advice would you like to give motorists, reminders, I should say?
First, speeding causes most accidents. The results are sometimes you have fatal collisions, we have serious injury, innocent persons are injured by reckless behavior, which relates to speeding. I believe you would have seen the collision on the ABC Highway over the weekend. That was sad. And I just want to remind persons, illegal activities cause problems. Reckless activities cause problems. These are the main contributing factors now to most of our serious collisions. Persons not giving thought to other road users, persons of the opinion that the roads are racetrack, and that's our biggest concern. Only this morning, persons reported for driving in excess of 120 kilometers on a 60-kilometer stretch. That's really too much speed, and we're very concerned. And these are the contributing factors of most of our serious collisions. You would have known, or you would have seen it before. At some period, sometime during the course of the day, our lights are on the flashing mode, flashing red. Persons of the opinion the lights are not working. They are. But the law requires if you approach an intersection manned by traffic lights and they are flashing red, first come, all motorists should stop. And we're sure that don't happen. It don't happen.
It doesn't.
It doesn't happen.
Well,
so that's a concern to us too.
We really got to take our time on the roads. One of the questions I want to ask you, I see a lot of videos coming out, people taking videos of police officers carrying out their duty. And is it legal for us to video an officer carrying out his or her duty? And why I'm asking, because we've often heard if you want to take someone's picture, you have to ask permission. Back in the days, even with tourism, they used to say, you know, you need to just ask permission. Or is it that you can video, but you can't post without permission? Do you have any information on that?
The posting, you know, you have to be careful what you post on social media. But we were, some years ago, it was challenged in court, and it was said that we cannot stop persons for videotaping us or taking photos of us whilst we are carrying out our duties. But, Joyanne, the hurtful part is, in serious collisions, whether it be death, otherwise murders or holidays, you will find that persons rush to scenes, take photos of these persons in the state that they're in, and post them on social media. For example, that collision over the weekend on the ABC area where that guy died, in a flash, that was on social media, with that guy's body hanging outside there. And their family have to know by seeing them on social media. That's not good. That's sad.
Is there a law? But okay, there's one that you can't stop them from videoing the police carrying out their duty, but can we not, or is there a law against that?
Well, like I said, our new app will deal with lots of those things. If you post something and it causes problems to others, I believe you can be sued for it. Because you have no authority to post things, that's not your concern. You should not be doing it. You shouldn't be doing it.
I think it's sad, though, because, I mean, people need to be mindful and think about themselves. Would you like to find out that your loved one, your child, your spouse, your mom, your dad is dead by a picture on a WhatsApp? I mean, and that's the way you find out. And I think people need to be more conscionable about it, to put themselves in their position, and not to be the first to post is like a competition. I don't know if it's for likes or is it for attention. They're certainly not reporters, and even then, reporters, journalists, the real ones, have to be mindful of what they put out in a newspaper, even put here on television. You're not supposed to be that irresponsible. But I would like to see the Computer Act Misuse Act, my apologies. Yes. That's something that we hear about. We see people sharing information. We don't know where it comes from. And if you find out where it comes from, then can charges be laid against people who do these types of things?
Of course, isn't that? The instructions where persons must adhere, and if you fail, or if you are there any breaches as it relates to that act, then that person can be easily charged. They can be charged under Computer Misuse Act.
So if I don't give permission to you, we have a conversation, I have a voice note I send to you. Mm-hmm. And I did not give you permission to share that voice note, and I hear it, and I know I only sent it to you. I can have you charged?
Of course. You misuse.
I want you to repeat that for those out there who may not know this. Repeat it again.
I figure, if you misuse anything, if I send you a message, Joyanne, about someone, and then you decide to post that message to someone else, you could be charged for posting it. You don't know how legitimate it is. You don't know the strength of it, but you decide you're going to post it, then you can be easily charged under the Computer Misuse Act. You are not supposed to publish things which you have no knowledge of. And even if you know knowledge of, you got to be careful what you publish too.
Okay, we got a WhatsApper here that we're going to read to you, Sergeant Seibert. What is the number to call if you witness someone breaking the law on the highway?
211 or 467-2725. They're both toll-free numbers. One is our emergency number, and one is our traffic hotline number. 467-2725 or 211, our emergency number.
So you give them obviously the plate and everything, and you do follow up.
Of course, we do follow up. But what might be mindful too, if a person sees someone committing an offense on the streets where they have concerns about, they give us the information, then we can rely upon that person to say, yes, I saw, then we can lay charges against that person. We can.
So it's 211, and can I have the other number? 467?
2725. That's a traffic hotline number.
Traffic hotline number is 467-2725. All right, because a lot of us could use that, but of course you don't want us to use the cell phone on the highway to report them, right?
No, you don't.
Not while driving.
No, you stop. You can stop and pull over and make that call. It's safer that way, yeah? If you can stop on the highway, pull over, where possible, make a call and go. Just don't drive and use a cell phone. That's happening too often, too often, and that's against the law. So we won't promote that for persons to continue to drive and speak. However, some persons have the system in your car where you can go through the car hands-free through the car system. That's cool. But driving and using the cell phone, holding it, if you're even holding your cell phone, once you're behind the steering wheel, that vehicle is moving, then there's a problem.
All right, so let me ask you, I don't know if you can answer this, but you can try, because I know you do more traffic, but we know that you were not traffic for many years in terms of when you started out in the middle of your career. We know you were attached to a lot of serious crimes that you had to investigate back in the days. Is that not correct?
Yes, that's in the early days.
Because people the younger people may only know you for traffic. The older people know about Seibert Johnson back in the days. But the types of crimes that we're seeing now, compared to maybe the 80s, 90s, would you say that is social media that makes it seem as if it's worse, or is it getting worse?
I believe lots of crime committed are some that I believe are viewed that occurred in the foreign countries like the U.S. But back in our day, we had some serious crime too. Remember, we had some serious criminals, Alfred Hardin, Mark Young, Winston Hall, and that group, Buddy Buffett. Those guys were serious. Those guys are more serious than the ones we have now. But these ones here are just shooting around. In those days, there were so many guns available, but now we don't know where these guns are coming from. But every bad boy in Barbados now, they're carrying guns, and they feel that they're super because they're carrying firearms. That's the concern. And they shoot while, and innocent persons might die as a result.
Well, yeah, because most of them are marksmen. I mean, sorry to say, but they just shoot the garbage can, everything, and they land, unfortunately, on somebody when they do that.
Yes. So that's the concern. That's the biggest concern. But I think the criminals then were worse than these ones now. But these ones here are more accessible to firearms than those back in those days.
How tiring is it for the police to have to go after the same person over and over again?
No,
because it happens.
Yeah, it happens. If you're caught, for example, you commit a serious offense, and then you're charged, placed before the court, you're given bail, you return, you do something more serious, return to court, given bail. It's a system. We can only do our part. We'll charge you, we'll arrest you and place you before the court, unless, it's the court's decision whether they're going to keep you or they're going to give you bail. But we do our part.
So who actually lays the charge? Let's say something happens. Is it the police or is it the DPP?
The police will lay the foundation. The charges then, the serious charges will go to the DPP. The Director of Public Prosecutions, he places mark on it, and then we go from there. But most of the persons who are placed before the court, sometimes, when they're given bail, we have no control over it. Our prosecutors can object to bail, but we have no control over that. That's in the magistrate's domain. Once they would have gone to the court, and he or she will decide if that person is a good candidate for bail or otherwise.
You have various sections of the police department, and most people are associating it with violent crime, murder, etc. But you also have a department called the Fraud Squad.
Yes.
And in an environment that we're in now where there are people being laid off and jobs are hard to come by, you're finding all types of things. Would you say there has been an increase in fraud in this country, money laundering, for example, too, as well? Do you have any information that would support that?
I am not sure, but what I can say to you, the activities are persons are targeting the elderly. You know, you'll find that persons will go to you and they come as if they belong to some one of these servicing companies. You must be aware of those persons. Make sure they have ID before you open your door. Especially in the nighttime, you'll find that persons, ladies were used before to approach homes of persons requesting this and that, and then there's a problem. So just make sure that that person is legit. If you're not sure, call the police. Do not open your doors for anybody who you don't recognize. Call 211 as soon as possible. Let us respond and see how legit that person is. By day or night.
We got a WhatsApper here for you, Sergeant Seibert. Can Sergeant Johnson verify if those social media warnings about people laying in wait on the road are true? The ones, I remember there's some things coming around telling people be careful because somebody hiding in a bush and putting cans and so on. Is there any truth to those reports?
I honestly, I don't see them. I don't see those reports here. But these things are reckless. These comments, they place the country in fear. Persons will say to you, okay, so this person have cans, this is doing, and then reports were made to the police. So we cannot verify whether it's legit or otherwise. If you encounter anything and you call us, then we can respond to it. It will be recorded, and it will say, well, there was a report of it. Other than that, if we don't have the information, we can't justify it. But several things are going on social media that the police don't even have a clue about sometimes. I can tell you that for sure. I saw something there where people were saying that the police said do this and do that, and when we checked, no such thing was given by the police. For example, we wanted some wanted men in connection with something recently, and they revived something. They went and they searched up something that was posted years ago and put it on social media, and then it was all over there. These are the persons we were looking for, and there was no truth in it.
Wow,
so these are some of the things we got to look out for.
How about this stop and search? We've seen, I haven't seen it recently, but I remember a couple of weeks ago, we see officers, they have the authority to pull over a vehicle and they stop you. They're not searching only for license and insurance. What exactly is that exercise about? Do they have the right to do that without a warrant? Can a police officer, for whatever reason, stop me in my car and ask me to step out and search my car?
Yes, of course. But if you have a problem with it, there's another method that can be done. We can detain you, ask to have a search warrant prepared, and then we can search the whole vehicle or even your premises if you think you have something hiding.
Oh, so you mean I can actually say, okay, officer, no, without my lawyer, or I protest?
Yes, you could.
You can,
then, like
but they will take you down to the station.
Then we can take you there. You can remain on the scene with the other policemen. We can get a warrant, come back and search your vehicle, and if something is found there, then we go to your home. It can be done.
Okay.
Once we found everything found illegal in your vehicle, then our next step, the search will be at your home. But Joyanne, if you are legit, if the police carry out checks for your own safety, the safety of you, why would you object to a policeman who just check, just open? I've been doing it for years, and I've come across persons, officer, no problem, open, check and see where it's going for. If you had something there hiding, you would not have said that to the police, would you?
True. I know. I agree. Similarly, if you have insurance, and license, you either show it. If you don't have it, then you have time to bring it in. It's 24 hours.
But the law requires now that you have the taxes with you at all times. The registration disc. That's what the law requires should be in the cubbyhole of your vehicle. That will show whether you have insurance, whether you're covered or you're registered. Then you should have some form of government issue ID or Barbados driver's license. A valid government issue ID or Barbados driver's license on you at all times. If you don't, or there's no way of verifying you or identifying you, then we can take you somewhere where we can make sure that you said who you are. That's the nearest police station for verification or identification purposes.
When police officers or let's just say they're doing a search, carrying a search in your home. We've heard stories of 5 o'clock in the morning, police knock. People talk about their property being damaged. Who's responsible for a broken door? I mean, is there a section where you say, well, my door has been broken? Let's just say they didn't find anything, even if they did, and the door needs repairing. Is that something that the police have to do, or you're on your own after that?
If you're claiming that your house was damaged, you will make an official complaint to the complex department, and everything will be investigated, and everything will be looked after. I can tell you that for sure. It'll be looked after. If you're claiming that your door was damaged, etc., it'll be looked after. But sometimes you will find that person object to most things, and they retaliate. I believe their behavior will be a little different from the average person, and that's sometimes where you have persons will report, "Oh, my door was damaged, mine this and that." Whether it's true or otherwise, then it will be investigated by our department.
Oh, okay. I want to know, how can we help the public? We're hearing, it's almost like every time we hear something, it feels like the norm. People don't spend a lot of time on it anymore. It's like a one-day wonder now, because they go again, here's another murder, here's another stabbing. And you're constantly hearing that. It kind of dilutes the whole seriousness of the situation, because Barbadians are feeling that this is happening too often, and that we're seeing people who don't really care about human life. And we're seeing more and more, we're seeing the fact that some people don't seem to care about the value of human life. What can we do to help the police?
You can do, if you have any information, you would have heard something, you would have seen something, anything illegal, like I said, give us a call as soon as possible. But there are some guys who have no respect for life whatsoever. You will find that two guys have an argument. Then that argument escalates, one will kill the other one. Now, you had no control over that. That resulted from a dispute between two persons. But what I'm saying is, any information whatsoever, if you would have heard and you're passing about someone making plans to do something, okay, I'm going to kill so-and-so, I'm going to beat up so-and-so, I'm going to break in someone's house, any information is good, no information is too little. But persons sometimes are scared to inform the police about information, about matters. I don't know why, but it only becomes effective when they're on their doorstep. When it's on their doorstep, that's when it becomes very effective. But like I'm saying, any information whatsoever is valuable to us. Any whatsoever.
We got a message here from Facebook from someone. Hi, good afternoon. When people keep blocking up my driveway and I keep asking them not to block it, what should I do? That's a common problem for people parking in people's driveways, etc. What can they do?
Call the police. That's an obstruction. You cannot block the entrance and exit to a residence or business. If there's an emergency, let's say there's a serious emergency at your home, whether the fire or ambulance have to respond, then they can't. They're unable. Then that is an obstruction. That person can be reported for causing an obstruction. That is stopping me from getting in and out of my residence at ease.
Okay, we got another WhatsApp question here. In light of the recent protests against law enforcement generally worldwide, what is the Royal Barbados Police Force doing so that our society doesn't see them in this same light?
We will continue to be professionals at all times, like how we are, and I'm sure that most of the citizens of this country are satisfied with the job that the police here are doing. Our teams, our various teams, our various departments are doing. I am sure. Like you said, we have our departments, they're doing their part, CD doing their part, traffic doing their part, and the Marine and all, even our K9 section, etc., are doing their part.
Doing their part.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Sergeant Seibert Johnson, I want to thank you. I know this is not going to be the last time. The fight against crime is on in this country. It is real. I am a firm believer that there are more people who do not do crime in this country than do, and I think that it's time the citizens get together and fight back. I want to thank you so much. To all of our viewers and listeners in Barbados and internationally, we want to thank you for joining us, whether that be CBC TV 8, YouTube, Facebook, or you listen to us on Q100.7 FM. I'm Joanne Haig. This has been Face It and Fix It. Until we meet again, God bless.